just know that you're doing the best that you can. And the best that you can is more than some of us grew up with, right? Like, so you're doing amazing.
Yeah.
Every day counts. And also when you have a bad day, just know that it's one day. Like,
Right.
there's so many more to look forward to. And that one day isn't going to be something your kid remembers for the rest of their life.
Hey there, incredible mompreneurs. Welcome to the Good Enough Mompreneur Podcast, where we focus on all things motherhood and entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Angela Mashuli, and get ready for a powerful episode that's about to redefine your perspective on motherhood and entrepreneurship. I am so grateful to be bringing this podcast episode to you on Christmas. This conversation, this platform, this community is such a gift to me. I just wanted to take a minute to say thank you. And we have a few more episodes coming out before the end of the year, so be sure to stay tuned. But today we have a special guest who's not just inspiring, but also a beacon of support for moms everywhere. Her name is Emma Flores, and she's the host of M.O.M.T.I.M.E Podcast. In this episode, we're going to take a deep dive into Emma's journey, exploring the passion and purpose behind the creation of her podcast. And from the joys to the challenges, Emma shares her insights on the chaos of being a podcast host and a mom, and the magic that happens when moms come together to support one another. But here's the game changer. Emma unveils the liberating truth that you don't have to have it all figured out. Join us as we navigate the uncharted waters of motherhood and entrepreneurship and embracing imperfections, finding strength in vulnerability, and discovering the beauty in being a good enough mompreneur. So grab your favorite cup of coffee and find a cozy spot, and let's embark on this journey of empowerment, laughter, and genuine connection with the incredible Emma Flores. This episode is not just a conversation, it's a celebration of all you amazing mompreneurs and moms out there. You are enough and you're doing an extraordinary job. So help me welcome Emma Flores to the podcast. Hi, Emma. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi.
I am so excited to talk to you. Honestly, you know, the episodes that I talk to fellow mom podcasters are so juicy because it's just like you get it and you're so moved by what you're passionate about, especially as a mom, to go through this entire process and hurdle and break through all of these mental blocks to put a podcast out in the world. And that is an incredible feat. I've done it myself. It is scary as hell. It is so hard, but if you stay with it, it's so rewarding. And, you know, so welcome. And you're the host of M.O.M.T.I.M.E.
Yep.
You know, I think it's so cool. So tell our listeners what M.O.M.T.I.M.E stands for, because I love it.
Yeah. Thank you. It stands for Motivating Other Mothers Together is More Empowering. So the concept around it is I just wanted to build a community where moms could reach out to each other and embrace each other with no judgment. Because what I found was like so my first daughter was like really colicky and very fussy. And I just remember like trying to talk to other people who I knew were moms. And it was sad to say that a lot of times, sometimes other moms were the ones that I felt were the most judgy when I was talking about these things that I was going through. While there were some that were super open and honest and like, you know, welcomed the conversation, there were others who like put walls up and made me feel like I wasn't doing something right. And I realized maybe that's their own thing. Maybe they don't have a space where they could share. So I just like, by raising my kids naturally, was just like, I need to create a space, I think, where moms are comfortable to share like all of the spectrum of what it takes to be a mom, the good and the really bad sometimes, and not feel ashamed to talk about it.
No, I think it's so needed, and it's so wonderful because, when my kids were that young, I don't think I definitely didn't have that space, and I was a military spouse, and so I lived without a lot of family near me, and it was a time where there wasn't the proliferation of information either. And so, I mean, I just love that we live in a time where you and I can connect and find each other. And then also, you can create this space for moms that it's desperately needed, because you are right. If moms are judging you, and I think we've all kind of been there where we've had these defenses up, and it's like, if I don't know the answers to some other mom, or judging another mom somehow makes us feel better.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Unfortunately, for some it does, because maybe you're feeling down about what you're doing, right? So it's like hard to lift someone else up when you feel like you're down and you're not being heard, or no one's appreciating what you're doing. I think appreciation is like the biggest word that comes with being a mom. The lack of it in all areas of what you do, but still giving everything all the time is so huge. And it's something that no one ever warns you about.
Yeah, you just can't imagine how much you're gonna have to give of yourself, and how there's not a lot of acknowledgement. Like, your kids are not gonna go, "Thanks, Mom."
Right. They don't know to be thankful, which your part of you is like, wow, that's great. My kids have never had to want for anything, or never had to realize that they're at a loss in any sort of way. But you're also like, nothing. No one's going to say thank you. Okay. We're just going to live in this space, and mom's just going to be, it's what's the word for it? It's like when you're automatically responsible and everyone just assumes that you got it. That's what everybody thinks. They just walk around and go, oh, mom's got it. Mom will remember. Mom will bring it, So it's a weird space to be in without being able to talk to other people and say, like, do you feel that way, or am I going crazy? And it's nice when you can talk to another mom and they're like, oh, yes. My kids did that the other day, or whatever, when they were little, and then you're just like, it's that moment of like reassurance that you're doing it right. And you're not going through something that's insane, that might feel insane in the moment.
Yeah. No, totally. So let's talk about some of the challenges and how you've overcome them, or maybe you're still in the midst of them, because I love sharing stories of that, because it's so important for us to be reminded that we're not alone in whatever we're trying to do. And it is so bad. Like, our mind drama is so bad when we start something new.
Yeah.
It is. We were talking earlier, we're our own worst enemy. So tell us about that. Like, how's it been? And I know you've had like some gaps. You started at one point, and now you picked it back up, and which is totally fine. Like, this whole, we're talking about pressure.
Right.
Look, girl, I got stories for you on how I started my podcast. I totally did it not how I was told how to do it, and it's fine.
Yeah. I mean, it was one of those things where I started to think about this concept like 10 years ago, right? Like when my kids were little, and I just couldn't get myself to have enough energy, motivation, support, all the things, right? So then eventually I started my Instagram and TikTok channels just to like put content out there, like reels or whatever. Most of it was just to be funny and lighthearted about real situations that other people could relate to, because that's the only space I could give it at the time. And then I recorded one episode with 3 of my best friends, And I was like, this is it. We're going full force. We're launching this thing, right? And that was like October of 2020 in the middle of COVID. And then I was like putting so much pressure on myself because I was like, okay, well, I launched this one episode and it was on camera. And so now I have to figure out how to meet people during COVID and record this thing. And it was too much pressure. I just stopped. I just completely dropped everything, all my channels. And then this year I was like, why does it have to be on camera? Why does it have to be every week? Why does it have to be anything other than what you naturally or organically want to say? And I just had that moment and I was like, huh. So then I relaunched everything and I put my old episodes out there, but I still started adding new ones on. And so I've been trying to do them every week. And like what we were talking about before was that I have skipped a week or two, you know, every now and then. One week it was because my daughter really wanted to spend time. And I was like, I mean, yeah, I'm going to do that instead of this other thing. Right. And then this last week that happened, I got sick. So I was just like, and then I thought, I'm creating a space where women and moms can come and not be judged. And I'm completely judging myself for not providing this service or whatever every week. And so I was like, what am I doing? Well, I'm back in that cycle. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I guess it's going to take a little while for me to just keep reminding myself, but I'm trying to remind everybody else. And it's like, be your own cheerleader instead of being your own enemy. And I'm trying really hard to get into that headspace of like positivity. And it's also going to help me be more creative, I think. If I'm just like, if it happens this week, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's not meant to happen. But it's definitely been a struggle. And I think having guests is also important to me because, well, I could talk all day long about all of my issues. I'm not sure everybody just wants to hear me yammer on all day. So it's also about getting the right people to come and talk. You know, obviously, you know how that feels. It's like, you want to have a little bit of difference with every guest that you bring on. And in my space, I definitely want to make sure that I'm representing different types of moms and different types of struggles, because that's the whole point, is for somebody to be able to connect. And like my story might not connect with, you know, that many people, but someone else's might be like, oh, wow, I'm going through that too. Like, you know, I have had to go on the IVF journey, or I've had to go on the adoption journey. Like I want all types of moms to feel safe in that space. So I really hope that I can start to meet new moms and be able to interview them and talk about their experiences openly, because that's the goal, right? Is to not hear my voice every week only. So that's also been a challenge, but I know I'll get there. I just have to believe in the process.
Yep. And I'll give you some tips for that. So I feel so along your journey too, you've also discovered that you have ADHD.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, personally, I have neurodivergence in my family, and, you know, I have to really understand, you know, that everybody doesn't think the same way, and everybody doesn't have the same motivation, and everybody doesn't have the same energy level or focus or So what are some ways, and I know you've done a little bit, you've talked about this on your podcast, what are some ways that maybe somebody listening has hard time focusing or organizing or staying motivated? What are some of the things that you find are maybe triggers? Or what are some of the things, like, you know, there are days that you just got to give yourself grace and go, I can't do this today, and it's just okay. And also, you know, what are some ways that you kind of set yourself up for success?
Great question.
And of course, it's a work in progress.
Right. That's the first thing I was going to say. I would say it's probably forever going to be a work in progress. I think learning this about myself was like such an amazing, eye-opening situation, because for so long I was so hard on myself for certain things that I didn't realize were just my natural triggers or whatever, you know, was affecting me. And I just felt like I was constantly defeated. Like, how are other people doing this? And how are they doing it so naturally? And like, how are people recording TikToks of like meal prep? And I was like, I can't even imagine. Like, it's just like, that seems so overwhelming to me.
Yeah.
I would love to be that person, right? Like, and that I think was the hard part, is not knowing that that wasn't ever going to be me, but not realizing it. And like, that was what I was trying to achieve. So I was almost like triggering myself by trying to be this overachiever, or trying to match what I thought other people were doing that was successful, or help them get through their day better and made their life easier. And I'm like, man, if I could just implement a few of those things that I see other people doing, my life would be so much more simple. Like, I would breeze through my day, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then I had to realize, once I understood what was going on, I had to realize, like, that's never going to work for you. Like, it might work for a week or two or whatever, but eventually it's going to catch up, and it's just not who you naturally are. So then you're going to spiral down. When you can't achieve something, at least in my way of like what triggers me, once I feel overwhelmed and I am like trying to achieve or dig myself out, I just give up. Like, it's one of those, all right, all or nothing. And I just completely shut down, and then nothing is going to motivate me. Nothing is going to get me where I need to be. I need to take like a full day, if not more, to just decompress. And I have to tell myself, like, you'll come back to that. You just have to step away for a minute. Like, you've let it overwhelm you. And for a while, I never stepped away. That was the big problem, is that I would just keep at it and keep at it and keep feeling miserable about it, keep feeling like a failure. Like, it was just like this constant, I always felt like I was catching up. I never felt like I was caught up. So I think that feeling is depressing. You know what I mean? Like, if you always feel like you're never ahead and your day has never run smooth once. I remember sitting and thinking, because I've been divorced, separated, all of that for over 5 years. But I remember the first couple of years living alone with my girls going, we've never been on a schedule. Like, something's wrong with me, and being like, if we just got on a schedule and we did the same thing every day, everything would be fine. I would feel caught up. And so I guess, to answer the question about what I've done to help myself, is I had to think about organization in a totally different way, because once organizing also became a task on the list, then it just was adding to the pile. So I had to find ways that was like, you're already going to be doing this thing. So while you're doing that, organize it this way. Or while you're doing that, do it for the whole week. You know what I mean? So I had to start thinking about it as like, don't add anything to your plate, but find a way to make this work where you don't feel like you are actually organizing. So one thing that I had talked about when I did it on my podcast was like, putting clothes away is like the most daunting task ever. Like, laundry to me is my most hated chore. And not only that, but putting it away and then having to figure out what my kids were going to wear every single morning was like, now I'm doing it twice. Now I feel like I am like, oh my God, I just leave it in the basket. You know what I mean? Like, it was just like, I can't do this, right? Like, how do people do this all day and everything else they have to do? So what I started to do was, instead of putting it away, like in the drawers, I bought cubbies and I put them away for the week. Like, I would put them away in outfits, right? So I'd take them, and instead of putting them in a drawer as just like all shirts, all pants, I would make outfits out of what I was folding and just shove them into cubbies. And so then eventually my kids just had outfits ready for a whole week at a time. And it was like, it wasn't adding anything because I was going to have to put them away anyways. But then slowly, like, getting ready in the morning, like, got a little easier. And I was like, oh, wait, okay, we're getting organized, right? Without thinking about it. So it was little things like that I had to just try to implement, where everybody else was like, well, if you wait till Sunday and like, it just seemed like, but no, I can't put that restriction on myself to say every Sunday you have to sit down and do this. That doesn't work for my ADHD. But if I'm like, I'm going to do laundry today, whatever day of the week that is, When I'm putting it away, put it in the cubbies and set it up for the next 7 days or whatever. So I think that's what helped me, is like taking that time frame and that task away from organization and just saying, when you are doing this one thing or this other thing, while you're doing that, set yourself up. And it really relieved a lot of that pressure for me. And again, I'm still a work in progress, because there's days where I'm like, uh-oh, I'm getting behind, and then my anxiety starts to like ramp up again. And it's especially worse when it's a task that I don't like to do, like laundry, right? So for me, like that's a big trigger. If I have to do something I don't love to do or I'm not passionate about, my brain immediately is like, it becomes a stressful thing, even if it's not a stressful thing. So I've had to just like sort of train myself to be like, well, as soon as this is done, you never have to do this again for 7 days. So would you like to feel relief now? Or do you want to feel like a smidgen of relief every day that doesn't really get you the joy that you're looking for?
Yeah.
So those are the little things that I've had to like tell myself, and I'm definitely still working on it for sure.
Yeah.
Self-care is a big one too. Like I am terrible at self-care. I think a lot of moms in general.
Yeah, I'm like, that's like across the board.
Yeah. So I had to really force myself and just say, when you get out of the shower, you will do these 3 things this is your time, right? The kids are good. It's 15 minutes. You can do it. And those 15 minutes grew to 20. And then, then I was like not feeling guilty about it because the kids were fine and nobody even noticed I was gone. And then it was just like slowly going, okay, now I have a mommy day out, like it's increased over time. But, before, like going to get a 1-hour massage I was like, I don't deserve this. Like, maybe I should just take the kids somewhere. I shouldn't have to leave them with somebody to go work. Like, so it's just this vicious cycle of like, you deserve this too, because if you can't show up as your best self, you're also failing as a mom in that sense, right? Like your kids need to see you at your best. And sometimes we really forget that. We think just putting in the work and shoving the emotions down and just dealing with life is better for them. But honestly, it isn't. Like we have to worry about ourselves just as much as we worry about them.
Yeah. And here's the thing. It's like, honestly, I feel like knowing something like you have ADHD and having that light turned on, it's a gift in a way, in that it makes you have to look at things differently. Because honestly, I think no matter how your brain is wired, you have those things that you don't want to do, and you have to figure out your own system. And oh my goodness, how much are we barraged with messages on how we should or should not be doing parenting, podcasting, business, all the things. And we are constantly given these messages and set expectations for ourselves on how we're supposed to be, and not checking in with ourselves on like, does this work for me? We're just like chasing this external gratification from some influencer or whatever. And it's just, we all have those tasks that we have to find out how it works for us. And it could have been delayed for years. I know there's things that I have just continued to do. Like, I use the example of Instagram or Instacart during the pandemic. Like my daughter kept telling me, like, it's 40 minutes almost to the Costco in Orlando from my house. And my kids have to have the chocolate milk from Costco. I don't have time to go to Costco, walk around Costco, get exhausted, drive back
extra
home.
Things you don't need.
Spend all this extra money. Be exhausted. Like my whole day is ruined after I go to Costco. And my oldest daughter was like, Mom, you can just Instacart it. And I kept saying, no, it's okay. I have to do it. I'll do it. It's fine. And then, I don't know, one day I didn't have the time, and I'm like, fine, we'll try this Instacart whatever thing. And now I haven't been to Costco in like forever.
Lifesaver.
I probably have saved thousands of dollars, and tells me how much time I've saved.
Mm-hmm. I think time is the most valuable thing that you're saving, not even the money, like
the energy. I mean, too, like I do not like to grocery shop or shop at
me neither.
I notice, like I like to go to Aldi because it's small and it's basic, and you go to other places and it's 4,000 possibilities, and it's draining, and I'm walking around this stupid store forgetting, and I'm going back and forth.
Yep.
Like,
exactly.
What the heck?
Overwhelming. And people are around, and it's just I'm the same way. I've used Instacart since the pandemic, and I swear by it. Like any sort of delivery type of service, just to cut time and energy, like you're saying, out of my day and give it back to something else that's more meaningful. I'm in. I'll do it any day of the week. Yeah.
But it wasn't until I had this pain point that I would still be doing it,
Of course, and a lot of people are still doing it, and they just and complaining about it, but it's just hard to like change is hard, but it's also like you're feeling like I'm allowing somebody else to do something that I'm more than capable of doing. I think people have a hard time with like letting that go, It's like I don't really have an excuse to not go to the grocery store. You don't need one. Your time and your energy, that's the excuse. That's enough.
Yeah. Well,
plenty.
When your podcast grows, and it's going to be the same thing about having somebody to do your social media or editing or, all the other things. So it carries, how we do one thing is how we do everything. And, I now use that to catch myself. Is this an Instacart thing? Like, it's okay if somebody else does my social media, and it's totally fine. And actually, I'm not a social media expert, and they might actually do it better.
Right. That's hard though, because you're like, when you're doing something like this, where you're putting your heart and soul into it, you want other people working for you that understand how much it means to you. And so it's hard to let go of that control. You know what I mean? Like this is your baby. This is your, what you love to do. And it's like, I want you to make sure you're representing it the best way possible. I think about that all the time. Like once this grows, it's like, oh no, who am I going to have help me? Like, I guess I just have to find the right people that understand my mission, because, oh my gosh, that's going to be tough.
No, I love my assistant, and it took me several people to like find the right one. But most importantly, she's a mom.
Yeah.
She gets it. And that was like my first question to you. Are you a mom? Because, I think it's so important. And she was a business owner, so she got it,
Oh yeah, that's totally great. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some of the challenges that you've kind of faced with, working from home? Because that's challenging too. I've worked at home for like a decade. So that's a question I get a lot. And so how have you made that work for you?
It's like, it has so many challenges, because my whole issue is that I never really shut it off. And sometimes, again, mom guilt, it's just constant, right? We find a way to be guilty for everything. But I feel like, my kids, before, when I worked in the office, home was a sacred place. It was our space. That's where we connected, and work didn't interfere with that, right? I shut it off when I left the office, and now there is no office. So it's like, it's been an interesting challenge to like blend the two, but not make sure my kids don't feel like they're getting less than, because work is here in this space as well with them. So it's been interesting, but when I first started, no boundaries. I literally was working all types of hours. My kids would need me, and I would get flustered because I'd be like, I need to do something, and then I'm like taking it out on them. And I'm like, that's not fair. It's 9 p.m. You should be worried about what they're asking you for, So I had to really like sit back and go, while this is a blessing that I'm able to be here with them all the time while I'm working, because a lot of people don't get that luxury. They have to go in the office. Their kids have to go to after school care or whatever. I can be home. I also need to understand and let them know this is when mommy's available no matter what. Like, this is your time. So I had to go, okay, I'm done answering the phone after this time. It can wait for tomorrow. We're not saving lives here. Like, I'm not a doctor. You know what I mean? Like, we can do things tomorrow. They can wait till I respond in the morning. Like, this is my family is way more important. And while I'm physically present here, that does not mean that I'm giving them what they need. So I really had to like totally set those boundaries. Now, every once in a while, something urgent may come up and, I'll run over and I'll start working. But for the majority of the time, every day, I cut it off. They know when, it's now home time, mom's away from work. We can ask her whatever we want. She's available. And we've also started this thing where like right when they come home from school, they used to be like so rambunctious, right? And that's like the heart of my day is like everyone, and I have a lot of business partners that are on the West Coast. So that's when they're like starting to reach out and we're starting to have meetings. And I'm like, they're running around in the background. My daughter's on her hover round. Like, I'm just like hoverboard or whatever. And I'm like, guys, I'm in a meeting, you know what I mean? So what we did was we implemented like, as soon as you come home from school, they sit at the dining room table and do homework, because that's everybody's now working. You know what I mean? So it really works, because by the time they're about getting done with homework, I'm winding down with my day. And it's like the perfect timing for them to then go off and be rambunctious. And, it's not going to disrupt what's going on. But it's been a while. I mean, I've been home now for 3 years, and I feel like just this year we've gotten into this groove. Plus, they're a little older now. So I think they understand a little better. I mean, I had the moments when we first started where they would like run in the screen, or I'd be in a meeting with like my vice president and my daughter's like, Mom, can I have a popsicle? And she's like, right here in the meeting with me. And I'm just like, oh, sorry. Luckily, everybody sort of gave grace at that time because everyone was starting to work from home and it was foreign. But like, I was mortified. I was like, we got to figure out a system. We cannot have this. Like, so, and again, as moms, I think sometimes we're judged a little more harshly, right? So like, if you're in a meeting with men or women who don't have children, or other people who have like certain help that they would never imagine. So you're already feeling like this, I don't know, stigma of like, you cannot come on camera. I am a mom. I'm already being judged for that. The last thing I need is for you to draw attention to that. So it's like this stress of making sure, they stay out of the way. But then I started to embrace that too somewhat. It was like, I'm home. Everyone's home. We just kind of have to deal with what happens in the background. And so again, it was that balance of, giving yourself grace, but also coming up with a system that worked for the whole family.
I love that so much. I mean, one of the silver linings for me, I'd worked at home for years before the pandemic, and I was kind of like, what is your problem? This is great.
Right.
And so I loved, because I used to feel like you did, where we silently apologizing that I was a mother, it was like, what the heck? This is terrible. Everybody knows that I have kids, but I don't want any evidence of that. I mean, it's ridiculous how we place that pressure on ourselves. But too, it makes me so sad when I know parents would benefit so much in many ways from being able to work remotely, but they won't give themselves permission to do that because they don't trust themselves to build those boundaries or systems. Or, I mean, think about the communication that you built with your children on saying, hey, this is what I need, and here's what we can do while, I get the time to work that I need. I mean, that's an incredible benefit. It's like we just want to avoid difficult situations and difficult conversations because we just don't think we can handle it. Like, it's just not going to work.
Right. They're not going to listen. They don't understand.
Right.
You know, how could they understand the severity of this? Yeah.
Right.
But they end up really taking you into consideration. Like now they'll walk out and be like, you know, now it's an understanding, and they really, they get it. It's like nice.
Yeah.
And we also set a boundary, you know what I mean? Like that helped them understand, like when their space was their space and when it was workspace. So yeah, I think you're right. Opening those lines of communication and knowing that they get it. Like at any age that I've talked to them about things and been totally open and transparent with them, you know, you change the way that you say it depending on how old they are.
Sure.
But they've always been open to it. And I think it's actually helped our relationship get closer and closer.
Right.
Like the more that we talk about things that, you know, I may have never thought that they could process, you know?
Right.
I can also say that I've said from the beginning that for me, in that respect, COVID was a blessing. I know that sounds like a crazy thing to say, but my kids were in daycare or some form of care outside of school from like the time the sun was coming up until the sun was going down because of work. Like I had to drop them off before work, then they had to get bused to school, then they had to get bused back to this after school situation. And I was rushing there to get there by 6:30. And like, I still feel guilty about that. And I did in the moment, I was feeling guilty, but there wasn't a work from home option. And now that I can go pick them up from school, first of all, that's amazing. And I get to bring them home. They're in their space. They're just happy being home. Even if they are doing homework, it's like not this force. I'm not in a cafeteria, you know, being forced to do it. It's just been so wonderful for them. And I feel like I couldn't be more grateful for that. I could never go back full time into an office now that we've had this, like ever, because I love this dynamic now. I love that they get to be here and just feel comfortable and not have to be like, well, I guess we'll get home after dark and immediately eat dinner and then take a shower and go to bed. You know, like there's no time. And so I'm so glad that I don't have to rob them of that time anymore. It's just great.
No, I mean, I could never really deal with that stress of like dropping them off and then being there all day and then rushing to get them. And to me, I was just like, this is just no.
Right.
And I love it when people talk about like, why do we feel imposter syndrome in a corporate world that really wasn't designed for mothers in the first place?
Right.
So I love that we're getting to redefine how we're working and how we're parenting. And I just think it has so many benefits. Our kids need us, you know, and it doesn't mean being on with them 100% of the day. But I think there's just, like you said, so much value. I think there's value too in them seeing you do what you do and seeing this professional side of you and going, dang, you know, mom isn't just doing the laundry and cooking dinner and, you know, what all the other million things that we do for them. But I just think it's so important. And I think I love that you had that experience because myself too, like you could not pay me to go back to an office. There is no way.
Right.
Not
it's
happening.
So interesting that you say the thing about your kids appreciating it and watching me do all the things I do, because funny enough, the Barbie movie actually triggered that in my oldest daughter. We watched it and she was like, wow, mom, I never realized like how much you have to deal with and how much you do. And I was like, it took the Barbie movie, you know, but I mean, I was grateful because it got the message across to her, you know, to see me as a mom doing all the things that they talked about in the movie and her really like correlating it like, oh, it's not just my mom. It's like, this is what women do, you know? And so when she said that after the movie and like showed that appreciation, I was like, yes, finally.
Yeah, I know. We went to see it twice and my daughters still want to go see it. There's like uncut or cut scenes in it this week and they're like, we have to go. And I'm like, couldn't find a time. I'm like, but yeah, I mean, that movie was incredible. I don't think that there was a mom that had a dry eye or didn't go out going, dang, I personally felt like the things said in that movie would never be said in my lifetime.
Right. I agree with you.
Like out loud, like who says that out loud?
Right. And acknowledged and have people be like, wow, that's amazing. Like, I never thought of it that way. I didn't see your perspective. Like, it was wild. It was like, I think every mom probably watched it like I did and went, yeah, like, I remember, like during the speech, I was like, yeah, yep. Like you're just like, whoa, okay. That's everything I feel on the inside all the time. And it's like hard to say it out loud. Like, what am I going to do? Tell my kids every day? And they're like, no, that's a lot.
I mean, I have this guest coming up who is so amazing, but she wrote this book where in the Mayan calendar in December of 2012, it shifted to allow more of a female balance in the world. And you can see that happening. I mean, we're huge Taylor Swift fans. I took my girls to a couple of concerts and just the empowerment, but it's the same in what we're doing.
Right. True. Very
true. Mean, it's like, holy, we didn't talk about this stuff when we were kids,
Right.
And
oh gosh, no.
That's what I tell my daughters.
Any mom back then being honest about the struggle or that they don't feel appreciated. And what's funny is 2012 is when my first daughter was born, but so it's interesting that that's when the future is female.
My second daughter was born in 2012. Yeah.
So, and that's when I thought about starting all this. I can't imagine if I did it. No, I feel like no one would have probably listened back then. Maybe.
Yeah.
But it probably would have been like a secret club. You know what I mean? Like, you can't really openly talk about this as much. But now it totally is being embraced. And I love that like our future generation is just like, I don't even see how this wasn't talked about. It's just like, very matter of fact. And it's beautiful to see it like grow that way. And like, everyone's just open and talking about things and their feelings and, ADHD, going back to that, like people openly talk about having struggles now, whereas it was such a stigma. It was like something's wrong with you and you're weird, So now it's like, wow, so many other people can relate to what you're going through. And it's like wonderful that we can actually talk about it. I think is therapy in itself, that we can all just openly talk to each other about it.
Yeah. I mean, this podcast is therapy. I started it for the same reason, because I'm like, time after time, I kept finding moms who were not confident to do what they wanted to do. Is that your dog?
Yes, sorry.
But that's okay. We all have lives. We all have animals. But I mean, now we can, we're all talking about this stuff, and I think it's amazing. So I know that, what are the next steps for your podcast? Where do you see it going? Like,
well, what's interesting is the podcast is really a launch point for what I really want to do. I decided to do the podcast because I could do it on my own, and it didn't require all of the things that I would need to do what I wanted to do. Eventually, I actually want to have like a community center for moms and a place where they can go for therapy or just self-love, self-care things. And I want it to be able to be a space where no matter your background, no matter your financial situation, you can come in and enjoy time and hopefully free therapy. So like eventually that's the space I want to create. So Mom.T.I.M.E, the podcast, is truly just like a way to grow the community before I open the center and get my name out there and get my mission out there. And it was just like an easy way to sort of like start talking about things, right? And getting everybody comfortable with who I am before I go, hey, come on over and, spend time with me. And they're like, stranger danger, I know I would be if I didn't, have some sort of connection already to someone. It would be much harder to take that leap of faith and go, I'll come over and support what you've got going on, physically. me. So I just thought, let's start it this way, you know, and then hopefully the community grows so much that I can open something and have people actually come and you know, talk the same way that we talk on the podcast, but also enjoy some things that like help them enrich their life as moms. And that's the goal, hopefully, eventually, right?
So cool. Yeah, we can talk about that. I know somebody's doing a similar thing that's so cool, and it looks like they're having success and doing some events, at least like they're starting with events.
Yeah, that's what
So
I want to do too.
yeah,
Yeah,
so that's cool. We'll chat more about that.
for sure.
I love that. I mean, it's such, you have no idea what you've given to me today.
Aw,
And sharing your story, it means so much to me to have a platform where I can do that, because it's just everything. I mean, it's just it's so important that moms and women support each other. And you know, you have this calling for a reason. And you know, so don't lose sight of that. There's a reason. And I love that you have given yourself permission to not have it all figured out and to not know how it's all going to turn out, because so often we don't give ourselves that permission. You've given yourself permission to not have to show up every day and to not, you know, maybe you can video record it, maybe not, who knows. But you're also on this journey to discover yourself and your strengths and your weaknesses and what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And so all of that together is just beautiful. And I know that you're going to have a lot of impact. There's so much potential in what you want to do, and you have this calling for a reason. So however I can amplify that and share that, it's awesome. But if you had a takeaway for anybody listening, what do you think that would be? Sorry.
It's okay.
We get a little emotional here sometimes, because
I think it's wonderful.
yeah.
I mean, I think that I've been so emotional lately too. So it's like I was crying all day yesterday. I was telling you I was at that thing. So yeah, I mean, I just appreciate it because it reminds me too that like I know that I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing, but like hearing you say it or anyone say it is nice. Woo, okay.
Yeah.
A takeaway. I would say what I always say, I think is I want women to take away that you don't have to have it all figured out ever. Like new moms, you know, like there's this pressure. It's the one job that doesn't come with training. You know what I mean? And so I think that we put so much pressure on ourselves. And I think that by being vulnerable and honest and just sharing what's actually going on, you'd be surprised how many other women are around you that you would not imagine have been through exactly what you've gone through or close to what you've gone through, and that can support you. You just have to be honest and just also give yourself patience and grace, because we are all just figuring it out like every single day. My kids are going to be 10 and 12 soon, and I'm still figuring out some days how to be a mom. Like I'm still figuring out what exactly they need, and it constantly changes. So it's just like, just know that you're doing the best that you can, and the best that you can is more than some of us grew up with, right? Like, so you're doing amazing. Every day counts. And also when you have a bad day, just know that it's one day. Like there's so many more to look forward to. And that one day isn't going to be something your kid remembers for the rest of their life. Like there's going to be so many more good moments. Like everybody has a bad day. That's it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and it's true too. Like we also think we have to have all the answers. And really, I just needed to show up and be present and want to be present with you today to share your story. That's it. I didn't need to and we put pressure on ourselves to do that too. And it's like, it's just so silly, the mind drama that constantly goes on. But I have loved our conversation. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and doing all the things to chat with me. And where can listeners find your podcast and connect with you? I love your Instagram. You're so funny. You're so
Thank you. Thank you. Everything is Mom.T.I.M.E, but with periods, because it is an acronym like we talked about in the beginning. I think for most things like Instagram and TikTok, the period at the end of the last E isn't there. So it's like mom dot, all that, all the way to Mom.T.I.M.E. And then the same thing with the podcast, it's under Mom.T.I.M.E. So if you look up my name or Emma Flores, or if you look up Mom.T.I.M.E, it should all pop up.
I love that. Thank you, Emma, so much. I'm going to leave all of your information in the show notes so people can connect with you and follow you, because I just, connecting with other moms helps lift me up, keep going.
Yeah.
So connect with Emma and, just sharing all that she's doing. Thanks,
Thank you
Emma.
so much, Angela.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you. A heartfelt thank you to Emma and our incredible listeners for tuning in. Be sure to check out Emma's Mom.T.I.M.E podcast in the show notes. I'll leave a link and a link to her Instagram. I love it. She's so witty and cuts through, the honesty of being a mom. And I'm so grateful she's created this platform where moms can find support and that familiar person who's not gonna be judging them. So remember, you don't have to have it all figured out, and being a good enough mompreneur is more than enough. And thank you so much again to Emma for sharing your wisdom and genuine insights. Your story is a beacon of encouragement for moms everywhere, and I'm so grateful to have had you on the show. And if you're struggling with creating something like Emma has, creating a podcast or growing a podcast or starting that business or taking the next leap in your business, I just want to remind you about my free mini course that is, about the 5 keys to building confidence. We have so many misunderstood ideas about confidence, and be sure to enroll in my free mini course. If you want to start out 2024 doing things that have been on your to-do list and your bucket list for years and months, and 2024 can be the year where you make this dramatic change in your life, and it can all start with building, true, authentic, long-lasting confidence, which my free mini course will give you a boost in doing. So if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to hit subscribe, leave a review, and share it with fellow mompreneurs who could use a dose of empowerment and connection. Your support means the world to me, and it helps us to continue to bring you inspiring stories and valuable insights. So stay tuned for more empowering episodes of the Good Enough Mompreneur Podcast, where you can celebrate the beauty of imperfection, the strength in vulnerability, and the incredible journey of being a mompreneur. Until next time, remember, you are enough. You're doing an extraordinary job, and you've got a tribe cheering you on. Sending you all the positive vibes and mompreneur magic on this Christmas. We've all been doing so much to create such an incredible time for our families. So be sure to also take some time for yourself. And until next time, I'm Angela Mishuli, your host of the Good Enough Mompreneur Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.